It was 4:47 in the morning when Ray finally stopped sleeping and started planning. He'd spent 11 months being patient, 11 months filing complaints, sending emails, knocking on doors that never opened, 11 months watching his carefully stacked woodpile shrink week after week, while the woman responsible smiled at him from across the cul-de-sac like she owned every inch of it. She practically did. But the morning Ray stopped being patient was the morning he walked out to his shed, measured what was missing, and decided to give her exactly what she kept coming back for. What Karen didn't know was he'd been preparing those logs for her all along. Before we dive in, drop a comment telling me where you're watching from and what time it is there. And if you love HOA revenge stories, hit subscribe. You don't want to miss what comes next. Ray Calloway was the kind of man who never asked for much. 31 years as a pipe fitter, 2 bad knees, and 1 good dog named Chester. After his wife Margaret passed, quietly, in the spring, the way she'd lived, Ray sold the house they'd shared for decades and moved somewhere smaller, somewhere without memories in every corner, a modest ranch home on Birchwood Court at the edge of the Clearwater Pines HOA community, where the lots were wide, and the neighbors, he was told, kept mostly to themselves. He'd spent his first month building a proper woodpile along the side fence, not because he needed it immediately, but because stacking wood was something his hands knew how to do. It was honest work, meditative. Chester would lie nearby while Ray split and stacked, and for the first time in a long time, the quiet felt okay. Then he met Diane Holbrook, HOA president, 3 consecutive terms. She introduced herself on his 7th day with a laminated welcome packet, a list of 17 community guidelines, and eyes that cataloged everything. The truck in the driveway, the garden boots by the door, the woodpile, like an assessor calculating what she could eventually control. She smiled the whole time. 2 weeks later, Ray found his first formal violation notice tucked under his windshield wiper. The woodpile, she'd written, was an aesthetic disruption to community standards and needed to be relocated behind a privacy screen within 10 days. He moved the woodpile. That was his first mistake. The first log disappeared in October. Ray noticed it the way you notice a small wrong, a flicker of confusion, a quick scan, a shrug. 1 log. Could have been anything. But Chester certainly didn't touch it. Ray told himself it was nothing, because at 64, after everything, a man learns to choose his battles. By November, it wasn't 1 log, it was 6, then 12, then an entire row stripped clean from the back of the stack, the kind of precise, deliberate removal that couldn't be explained away. Ray set up a cheap trail camera angled at the woodpile before he went to bed one Thursday night. Friday morning, the footage told him everything. 2:14 a.m., Diane Holbrook, in a dark coat, moving along the fence line with the quiet efficiency of someone who had done this before. She didn't rush. She stacked logs into a canvas tote, 1, 2, 3, 4, and disappeared back toward her property like a shadow swallowing itself. Ray watched the clip 4 times. Then he drove to the non-emergency police line and filed a report. The officer was polite, sympathetic even, but Firewood, he explained carefully, was notoriously difficult to prove ownership of in a civil dispute. Without markings, without a clear chain of custody, it was neighbor versus neighbor. He suggested Ray pursue it through the HOA's internal dispute process. The HOA's internal dispute process was run by Diane Holbrook. Ray filed anyway. His complaint was acknowledged, logged, and closed within 48 hours. Insufficient evidence. No further action required. The letter was signed with her name. That's when Frank Mubarak from 3 doors down knocked on Ray's door with a casserole dish and an expression that said he already knew. Frank had lived on Birchwood Court for 9 years. He'd watched 2 families leave, quietly, without explanation, and he'd watched Diane Holbrook's woodpile grow suspiciously full every winter. He'd never said anything because, as he put it, you don't poke a machine built to grind people down. But he'd seen the footage now, and something in him had shifted. Frank became Ray's witness, his archivist, his quiet ally. Together, they documented 4 more incidents over December, dates, timestamps, log counts before and after. Ray sent the compiled record to the HOA board. He sent it to the county property office. He sent a certified letter to Diane Holbrook herself, formal and measured. Each avenue closed like a door in a dream. Diane Holbrook's response to his certified letter was a new violation notice, citing the trail camera itself as an unauthorized surveillance device in violation of community privacy guidelines, subject to a $200 fine per week until removed. She had turned his evidence against him. Ray paid the first fine. He took the camera down. He stood in his backyard on a gray January evening, Chester pressing warm against his leg, and looked at the woodpile he'd spent months building, reduced now to less than half, and felt something in his chest go very, very still. Not anger, not despair. Clarity. He'd tried every reasonable door a reasonable man could knock on, and every single one had Diane Holbrook standing behind it, smiling with that laminated patience of hers. So Ray stopped knocking. He went into his shed, pulled out his hand drill, his wood filler, and a large container of bright pink powdered dye, the kind used for outdoor color runs that he'd ordered online 3 weeks ago just in case it ever came to this. It had come to this. Each hollowed log was carved clean from the inside, packed tightly with bright pink powder dye powder, then sealed with wood filler and sanded smooth. Identical to every other log in the stack, indistinguishable unless you knew exactly what you were looking for. He restacked the pile and waited. It happened on a Saturday morning in late February, during the quarterly HOA community walkthrough, Diane conducting it personally, clipboard in hand, 4 board members trailing behind her. 7 neighbors had come outside that morning, some tending yards, some, Ray suspected, because word had quietly traveled that something on Birchwood Court was finally about to shift. Frank Mubarak stood near his mailbox, hands in his pockets, watching. Ray sat on his porch with Chester and a cup of coffee that had gone cold an hour ago. The logs Ray had prepared had made their way into Diane's home earlier that week, right on schedule. When she'd carried them inside, the dye had done its work silently, coating her hands, her coat sleeves, the canvas tote she always used, in vivid, unmistakable pink that no amount of washing had fully lifted. But it was the community walkthrough where it truly unraveled. One of the board members, making polite conversation, complimented the firewood stacked neatly beside Diane's back door, the remaining portion she hadn't brought inside yet, still faintly dusted pink at the edges. Asked where she'd sourced such good-looking wood. Diane smiled without hesitation. "I didn't buy it," she said, clipboard pressed to her chest. "I sourced it locally." The silence that followed lasted exactly long enough. Frank looked at Ray, Ray looked at his coffee. 2 board members exchanged a glance that contained an entire conversation, and Diane's pink-stained hands, still visible at the cuffs, rested against that clipboard like the world's most honest piece of evidence. She realized what she'd said approximately 3 seconds after everyone else did. There are moments when a person's carefully constructed version of themselves cracks. Not dramatically, not with a crash, but with the quiet, irreversible sound of credibility leaving a room. This was that moment. Diane Holbrook did not attend the following month's HOA board meeting. The 3 board members who had witnessed the walkthrough submitted a formal review request within the week, something that, according to Frank, had never happened in 9 years on Birchwood Court. The investigation that followed was quiet and methodical. Trail camera footage, Ray's archived complaint records, the time-stamped photographs he and Frank had compiled through 11 months of closed doors, all of it entered the record now, suddenly relevant, suddenly impossible to dismiss. By April, Diane had resigned her presidency. No announcement, no farewell. just a name missing from the letterhead on the next community notice. Ray heard it first from Frank, who delivered the news the same way he delivered the casserole, quietly at the door, with the expression of a man who had waited a long time to say something simple. Ray nodded, put the kettle on, let Chester outside. He felt no celebration, just the particular peace of a man who had done nothing wrong, endured everything patiently, and watched the truth eventually find its own way into the light, as truth, given enough time, almost always does. He restacked what remained of his woodpile that afternoon. Solid logs this time, nothing hollowed, nothing hidden. He didn't need it anymore. Some people are handed authority and treated like a gift to share. Others treat it like a weapon. And sometimes the only thing left to ask is, what takes longer, the abuse or the reckoning? Drop your answer in the comments. And if you've ever lived next door to someone like Diane Holbrook, you already know. If you enjoyed watching karma work, smash that like button and subscribe. I post new HOA revenge stories every week. Comment below, have you ever dealt with a Karen like this?